For private practices, we say about 6 to 9 months, NHS or mixed 9 to 12.
Yeah. You'd ultimately kiss a lot of frogs to actually find that perfect dental practice.
They will only lend against whatever the valuation will come to. So if the asking price is $1 million and the valuation comes back to 900,000, they will not lend against $1 million.
Today, we're going to be talking about the journey of buying a dental practice. And buying a dental practice can be a complex process and it can be a very long process. So today we thought we'd break it down into a few stages. You deal with buyers all the time, okay? That's who you mainly talk to, okay? What's usually the first step? What happens when someone approaches you?
Usually the first conversations I have is either it's exploratory, which means that the potential buyer hasn't actually looked at anything yet, just wants to know what they have to look out for, affordability, just general things in a sense. But at the same time, people can call me when they already found something that they like and want to see if they can get finance for it. So it's usually one or the other. I see more and more exploratory conversation just because of the climate, essentially.
Yeah.
So they want to make sure that before they even start looking, that they are going to afford it, or the things they have to look out for, because there's a lot of things to look out for.
Let's say this, I'm a buyer, okay, and I'm thinking of buying a dental practice. I haven't found a practice. Should they come and talk to you first, do you think?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, of course. You want to be prepared. You're not buying your weekly shopping. You're buying a dental practice. You need to know what you look out for.
Yeah.
But affordability is different.
Okay.
It's not only up to what you can afford, it's how much the practice makes. And does it make sense you going in there? Because I always say, if there's an implantologist in place and you only do general dentistry, that's already a red flag, essentially, because you cannot do all the work that the previous owner did. So therefore, you have to already hire associates to do some of the work that you're not able to, therefore reducing EBITDA. Affordability goes down. So your ideal situation is that you take over from somebody that you can improve the services upon. So if they're not doing ortho, you introduce ortho. If you're not doing implantology, you introduce implantology. So that's your perfect situation, because you have that startup EBITDA and then you can just improve on it.
So it's essentially what he's saying is add value. How can you add value to the business? Now, this kind of reminds me of a client we worked with a few years back, and she bought a dental practice. She was less experienced, but she did go and buy a practice with a more experienced practitioner working there. And against our suggestion, okay, we said it's probably not going to work out because he's generating a large share of the income through his speciality work and he's just a lot more experienced. But she bought it because the banks will lend to dentists, okay, because they like dentists. They think, oh, okay, it's an easy bet. But it was kind of a house of cards. It came crashing down, mainly because she couldn't replicate the dentistry this guy was doing, and the patients didn't really buy into her, and then it was a knock-on effect, and that was a real problem. And so she kind of effectively had to start from scratch again, okay, from that same premises, but it was quite an ugly and messy affair for a few years for her. So I think your point of that when you're buying a practice, it's so important to know what to look for, what type of practice, what can you add value to? As you said, what other services or other team members can you bring in to grow the profitability, grow the earnings? And then at the same time, affordability, how much of a deposit have you got? How much do you feel comfortable borrowing? That's a really important aspect.
It is, yeah.
A bank might lend you millions of pounds, okay, but do you feel comfortable that you have to make sure that you're paying 40 grand a month in terms of repayments and interest and capital every month? That's a lot of money to generate per month. So everyone's different. And then maybe if you haven't found a practice, you start looking for a practice.
Yes. We give you the tools essentially. So you go there and make research, make informed decisions about your next purchases. Then you know exactly which sales brochures to look at, which practices to look at.
So next stage after exploratory, I'm a buyer and I found a practice and I'm interested in buying this practice. And what do I do next? Finance. Okay.
You come to me and you say, I found a practice. I like it a lot. I want to see if the bank actually has appetite for it. So we get some information from you, such as sales brochures, if it's available. Sometimes they are private sales. We get your CB. The banks want to see pretty much your skill set, what you can do. Account statements for like 6 months personal, and then 3 years accounts from the dental practice you're buying. And here, very important, We're not talking about 2020.
So most recent sets of accounts.
From there as well, I'll have some I'll have a talk to you regarding who's the current principal, why are they retiring, how you can then replace them effectively, what your plans are for the practice itself. Are you going to extend the hours? Are all the days available? Do you have evening appointments available? Anything that can increase at that point, because you want to present that to the bank and make them attracted to the deal, essentially. Once we have all that chat, then I take the application. Now I make the application in a bank approved form, send it over to the lenders. They'll come back to me saying, yes, we're happy to work with you. And this is where it gets a little bit complicated. It's some sales agents at this moment, they kind of want to know if the bank will work with you before you can actually submit an offer. But at the same time, banks like to see that the offer was already accepted because they don't want to work on the asking price. They want to work on already the accepted price. So it comes to a little bit of a conflict. But I always rather say, just go to the bank first, see if there's appetite, because there's no point of going.
I agree. And I think also it's then that point of negotiation is really important as well. If you have finance kind of agreed in outline, you're in a stronger position. So I've got a bank who's interested. I'm going to negotiate on the price. And that's again where I've helped other clients over the years negotiate on the deal and get better terms. And secondly, do the numbers actually represent the reality? Okay, so that's really important. So let's assume they make an offer, an offer is accepted, and we've helped with the negotiation. What happens then on the financing side of things?
So after the first indicative terms, it goes to agreement in principle, which means that the relationship we have with the banks themselves, they send it over to the credit team. The credit team has a look over, make sure everything is correct, make sure the serviceability makes sense, everything makes sense. And then sends over the letter, which is an AIP, agreement in principle, over to the buyer to sign. And that means it's becoming reality. That's the starting stage. Oh, but before that as well, we're going to have terms from different lenders. And at that point, I'll represent everything to you. And you make the most informed decision to make to choose whatever rates, terms make the most sense for you.
What's the best deal for your specific situation?
Everybody's different. And not every bank will do what's the best for you, essentially.
Whilst you're doing all that, we also need to make sure we've got, at this stage, we've engaged solicitors, we've engaged accountants as well, okay? Solicitors to help with perhaps drafting heads of terms agreement, to say what you've agreed in verbally is put on a piece of paper, so you have an outline of what's been agreed, and then accountants also to get involved in the kind of financial due diligence stage as the deal progresses, okay? So agreement in principle is agreed, as you said, okay? They choose a lender, okay?
That's beforehand.
But let's assume that's happened. Concurrently, the solicitor is probably engaged, accountants are engaged. What happens next from a...
Valuations.
So what does that mean? So valuation, let me get this clear though.
Two types.
There's two types. It's very important you highlight this. So why don't you explain the two?
So from a finance point, the valuation means when the bank will give you a panel of valuators, you will choose one, whatever suits you the best, to be sent over to the premises to evaluate the goodwill and the freehold if you're buying the freehold as well. So that's the valuation instructed by the bank. And what's very important here is they will only lend against whatever the valuation will come to. So if the asking price is $1 million and the valuation comes back to 900,000, they will not lend against $1 million, even though you already agreed to that price. They will lend against £900,000. Therefore, it comes to a tricky situation, which I can explain for a second. You got three choices at that point. You go back to the seller, you try to negotiate the price down so he matches whatever the valuator said. You can meet him halfway if you want to do that, but it has to come out of your pocket, or the sale falls through. And unfortunately, it kind of happens. It's like 10 to 20% of the cases, unfortunately, because as a seller, you want to make as much as possible, but the bank is only comfortable giving whatever the actual value is.
So assuming the valuer comes back at a price which is reflective of what's been offered, okay, then the deal would be moving forward, okay, and then the solicitors get involved to draft the sale and purchase agreement. At that same time, they're doing the legal due diligence, the accountants are engaged to do the financial due diligence, and then we kind of go through this drawn-out process, which can take a number of months.
For private practices, we say about 6 to 9 months, and NHS are mixed 9 to 12.
Yeah, a long road to buying a practice, okay?
And you'll be guided through the whole process, don't worry. The banks are there to help you, we're there to help you, so it's not going to be that you're put into the situation and good luck. It's going to be a lot of conversations throughout the
Correct. But as someone who's advised practices for many, many years, and I think where when it works well, is that when the buyer is engaged and they're listening to their accountants or listening to their lawyers, okay, to ask the right questions, to get the information, to confirm things. I've seen many people buy practices where they haven't really invested in the due diligence process sufficiently. And ultimately, the words buy, beware, caveat emptor definitely apply here. You're spending a lot of money on a dental practice, and I'd rather you walk away and spend a few £1,000s rather than buying something that isn't actually what it was truly represented in the first place. So that's why the due diligence is such an important aspect of buying any dental practice, any business, to be honest, any business. Otherwise, you just don't know what's happening. So otherwise, you could go in and open up a can of worms. And I've sadly, again, seen this, not just one, many scenarios over the years where people have bought practices because the banks lend them the money because they like dentists. They walk in and then the team isn't particularly helpful. The numbers that were there aren't really what they were before. Some of the team members have left. It's a mess, okay? And you kind of wonder, why did you buy it? You spent lots and lots of money, time and effort on doing this and borrowing, and you've kind of got a noose around your neck and you're effectively starting again. You've bought a practice that you kind of have to reinvent again.
Yeah, from scratch, yeah.
So really important thing to stress is there's a phrase, you'd ultimately kiss a lot of frogs to actually find that perfect dental practice. I think my experience has taught me that people should be willing to part with a little bit of money up front and say no to a few practices and then eventually say, you know what, I found the right one. Because that's a really important part of the process. And that's not just for buying practices, even for startups, finding locations or finding premises or negotiating leases. It applies to that area as well.
Like you said, yeah, very important. You're going to waste a little bit of money in the beginning. It's just part of the deal. And for me, it's a drop in the ocean long term, because if you're scared of losing £3,000 to £4,000 to gain £1 million practice,
you shouldn't be in business there, to be honest with you. You shouldn't be buying a practice. That's my honest opinion. But business is all about risk, okay? And you have to be willing to take calculated risks, okay, to invest and to secure the right deal and the right opportunity for you. So in summary, remember, you're going to have to kiss a lot of frogs, and maybe one day you will find that perfect practice for you. If you need any help in this buying process, we can manage the whole process and help you through that whole process and get you the right deal, not the best deal, the right deal for you.